Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by my guy, Nate Weitzer, on the East Coast. And we are looking at Hornets visiting the Golden State Warriors. I will be at Chase Center tonight. Not Oracle Arena anymore. Checking that one out, probably putting some live bets out there that we'll talk about here in just a minute as well. But as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area. And do make sure to check out the other two videos we have up for you on this big fat Wednesday night NBA slate. Got a player props video out there for you, as well as one other game we're looking at with the Wizards and Raptors. But for this one, Nate, we are going to talk about that Warriors-Hornets game, and let's get into those lines for tonight.
Yeah, the Dubs are -6 favorites at home. Doesn't seem to be moving much. The total is fluctuating a little bit. It's been bet up to 226.5 some places. And that's an intriguing number we'll talk about. We're looking at the other games on this full slate, though. Celtics -7 at Orlando. The Knicks +1 at Indiana. That's pretty tasty there. I would take the Knickerbockers. Trailblazers -4 at Cavs. Not touching that. The Cavs have been so weird this year. +3.5 are the Raptors at the Wizards. We have a separate video up about that one, breaking down some good value bets. Hawks +5 at Nets. Intriguing player props there. Nuggets +1 at Grizzlies. They just played a couple days ago. Clippers are -1 at the Wolves. Mavs are +1 on a back-to-back at San Antonio. And finally, the Pelicans +5 at the Kings, who are on a back-to-back. Josh, since you essentially are a amateur beat writer for this Golden State team, I will let you take it away. What should we be looking for tonight?
I appreciate that, Nate. What we should be looking for tonight. Interestingly enough, I'm going to sort of start us off talking about why this game seems like it would be the over, which is why the total did get bet up from 224 at its open to 226, where it currently stands on most books. And that is because of the amount of offense that both of these teams have played. I mean, really, Charlotte is the team that makes you go over, right? They've got the number 3 offensive rating this year, interestingly enough, behind Philly and Chicago, who are 1 and 2 respectively. And then the 3rd worst defensive rating. They played the 5th fastest pace. They've made an obvious game plan to out offense you and out not defense you as best as they can, because they really are not trying at all on that side of the floor, to be honest. And they really don't have a single interior presence to help them there, considering there's playing a lot of that small ball with PJ Washington at the 5 and guys like that. So there's not much size in their lineup in the first place. They do like to run and gun, and that's led to them having 6 out of their first 8 games go over, right? They've also got the number 1 3-point percentage in Charlotte does, and Golden State's 5th right now. As we know, they've got a ton of sharpshooters with Damian Lee and Jordan Poole adding to Steph Curry. They both allow a ton of 3 points, at least shots to be put up. Golden State's opponents are putting up 42.4% of their shots from 3-point, which they're giving that up, a ton of those, just mostly because they're flying around, playing a lot of sort of helter-skelter D and trying to cause turnovers that way. But they're staying home really well as well. And the Warriors are, in terms of how they're defending the paint, and how they're defending everywhere else. They have the 2nd highest defensive rebound percentage behind those Miami Heat that we talked about in yesterday's video. So, it all seems to be like leading towards this giant over, and especially because of the way that, Charlotte has had 6 of their 8 go over this year so far. However, after speaking closely with you and looking a little bit closely at the numbers, this game feels like it's ripe for an under, starting with my 2 favorite reasons, and I'll let you take it from here, Nate. But the last, after going over in their first game, the Warriors have gone under in their last 5. And they've had some pretty big spreads there that they've had to go under, and they have gone under them around 229, 226, 230, gone under there. And Charlotte has 2 unders this year away on the road against good teams. One against Brooklyn, who is actually better defensively this year, as much as they are also worse at offense. They're better defensively, and Miami is going to be one of the best defensive teams we've seen since like the '94 Knicks. So, I would say this is another moment in time where you can consider the hype a little bit too much in terms of the over that's being played here by a ton of the public and probably some of these sharks. And I think we can find some really good, some really good space here to zag when everyone else is zigging.
Yeah, especially if you're using the live betting angle, because I like this game to start hot first and foremost. Just looking at the numbers, the first quarter over is 57.5 points. I have no problem taking that. The way Steph usually comes out, and gets this team going. The Warriors are actually first in the NBA, 33.2 points per game in the first. The Hornets actually give up a league high 33.2 points per game in the first. And the Warriors, I think their defense will clamp down on the Hornets late. I think that Charlotte doesn't necessarily have a good crunch time offense right now. It's a lot of LaMelo dancing, trying to do things that aren't necessarily going to work in the fourth quarter as much as they worked in the first three. So I think we go over 60 in the first quarter. The total maybe even creeps up to 235 or higher. And that's when you bet the under, assuming the Warriors are going to put the clamps on late, which they have, which is why, they're 3-0 to the under this year at home. Games averaging just 206 at Chase Center. Their pace is completely different. They're 15th at home versus 3rd on the road. Their offensive rating actually dips a little bit. And that last year when they were favored, they went 23-15 to the under, because when they're favored, they actually are a good defensive matchup for these teams. So I would think I wouldn't really touch a 6-point spread. I think this is right in the sweet spot from odds makers where you don't want to bet it. But I would gladly tease it down to -2 with that other game I mentioned in the lines. The Knicks +1 at Indy, they should be favored. If you get them +5, I don't think that's going awry for you. So that's a great teaser there. And I would consider the Warriors money line with the under if it gets bet up to closer to 230 pregame. But otherwise, I love just hammering that first quarter over, because like you said, you want to see some excitement. You want to see teams hoisting threes in the first quarter, and tuning in for that. I think you can expect both teams to flirt with at least 30 points in that first one.
Yeah, that feels good. That's going to be my live betting angle, is wait for this one to get a few points. You mentioned the first quarter. I'll also say Steph Curry is averaging about 13 points in the first quarter in about 6 or 7 games this season for the Dubs. So that's super impressive, and another reason to think that he'll come out hot, just to back you up on your point about Steph coming out blazing. But looking to have this game settle down, looking for the pace to slow down a little bit after they get going and things. And to your point, I also really, really love that Knicks game. These are two teams that I obviously follow as well as any other team, and have a really solid sort of pulse on when the Knicks are going to have a good matchup versus a bad one. As we said, we called that Raptors money line game the other day. That was a nice little pickup there in some units. And this one is the same way in terms of the Pacers, not going too far into it with that one, but feel really, really good about the Knicks on the road there. And so, teasing those two games down feels really, really good together. The live betting angle that you mentioned as well, for me, will also be around the spread, as I do think that if the Warriors sort of pull out a nice little lead at some point in the first half, which I'm not necessarily even saying is going to happen. I do think Charlotte will stick around at least in the first half. But if we can get that spread down to about, under 3-2-1 at any point in time during the second or third quarter, when it might still be a really close game, I would go ahead and take a nice bet on the Warriors at that point in time to pull this one out at the end, which is what I definitely think they'll do. Steph usually brings it against his hometown team, the Charlotte Hornets, where he grew up in North Carolina, obviously where Dell was playing, and his averages around in terms of points, rebounds, and assists a game against them career-wise is at about 35, 36, which is pretty good for him, about 25 points a game against them. So I think we can expect him to continue that and be able to pull this one out for them. So that is all the time that we have for today. Make sure you check out that Warriors Hornets game. Might see me in the crowd tonight, and do like and subscribe to that video as we continue to move on this NBA season tonight. Big slate on Wednesday. Got another video up for you with the Wizards and Raptors, as we mentioned, and that player props video as always. So make sure to check that out. And until we see you next time, happy betting.